Baker leans in. There's the snap. Blitz comes. Mayfield back. Loads. Throws. Picked up by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes. Oh, baby. 1:33 to go.
Sliding left. On the go. Throws. End zone. Touchdown. The Bills score from 13 yards out.
Good morning. Happy Monday here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi Lulla. Avarie Howard here with me this morning. Avarie, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How was your weekend?
It was all right. It was a little too fast, as they often are. What did you have coverage duties this weekend?
I did. I had Omaha hockey.
Okay.
So a little bit of a tough weekend for them.
Yeah, not ideal.
No, not ideal. They played them pretty tough the first two periods, both games. Denver's just really, really, really good.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, really good. I wouldn't be surprised if they make a really, really long run in the postseason. Yeah, I can see them being a contender for a while. But yeah, so I mean, the crowds were great. Environment was good. It was the first home series of the year. They haven't been home in, it was like 40 days, I think it was. So that was exciting and a good crowd. But yeah, tough results for both the games. But they're entertaining. Got a little chippy at the end. So yeah, brought some entertainment. But yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, so they lost both of those games, 6-3, 6-2, respectively. I mean, this is a team that you're probably looking at as a prime candidate for a Frozen Four spot.
From what I saw, I mean, between two guys, you've got 35 goals.
Yeah.
They're on their top line. So, I mean, yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable.
And this is, number 5 team in the country. They were as high as number 2 earlier in the year. Like, this is a really, really good hockey team.
Yeah.
Obviously, kind of a good measuring stick for Omaha as they have those types of aspirations as well. But so Omaha hockey for you, anything is that your
That was really it, honestly. I mean, I had to help pay attention to the whole Nebraska ball eventful weekend that they had, alumni weekend and all that fun stuff. So had to kind of help pitch in with that. And that's really about it. No, it wasn't too crazy of a weekend. Team was everywhere, but that's where I was at.
And did you get I know we talked about it on Friday. Did you get a chance to watch a little Polynesian Bowl on Friday?
I didn't get to watch. Okay, I got to watch like the last 5 minutes because I got home from hockey.
Okay.
And I turned it on, and it was actually the first thing on YouTube TV. Dylan and the Huskers squad, I don't think was in at that point from what it sounded like.
No, it didn't seem like it.
Yeah, I only got literally the last 5 minutes. I got on and they did a little feature on him, actually. They talked about him for a little bit, but that was really about it. So I watched
kind of the first half passively, like while you're doing other stuff, because let's be honest, it's not like terrific football as you're watching a high school all-star game. But it is cool to see Huskers or future Huskers on that stage, and to kind of see them get their moment there. What was some pretty good football was the NFL this weekend.
Sure was.
We actually finally got some good games. The 49ers game was a little too good for my liking. I would have liked a little more separation there. I'm sure you felt the same way about the
It was an interesting game.
It was too interesting. I wasn't having that. I wanted a nice, comfortable victory.
Yeah, I'm kind of actually bummed because it was overlapped with the hockey game on Saturday evening, so I didn't get to watch it really much at all. I kind of got it like updates, and then by the time the game was over and I got somewhere to watch it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's 24-21.
Yeah.
I completely, entirely missed that, and then I watched the Jordan Love interception, and then that was really it. So I haven't really had time to check in on how it even got there.
So you're watching that Greenlaw interception at the end, right?
Yes.
What's, as a non-49er fan, what's going through your
head
in
the middle of the field
as he no, not just that, but after he's intercepted it and he's running around and the announcers are screaming, get down, and then the camera gets blocked. I was like, oh, he's definitely gonna fumble this ball. Like, there is 0% chance he's gonna. Like, when the camera emerges from behind the fans, there is a 0% chance San Francisco still has the ball.
Gotcha.
I don't know if it's like PTSD from I think like Kevin Smith against Texas Tech in like 2005 or something. I don't know. Yeah. But I was, as he's running around, I was like, God, they're going to lose the game this way, aren't they?
He's going to keep running and he's going to lose the football.
Yeah, and I had no idea what he was doing.
Yeah, because you couldn't see?
Well, part of it I couldn't see because there was, I think a fan popped up right in front of the camera or whatever. But also I meant like philosophically, I had no idea what he was doing.
Yeah.
So during part of the run, I literally had no idea what he was doing.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't see they couldn't get the camera switched or whatever. And then the entire time, philosophically, I was just like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
And it seemed like his own teammates were trying to tackle him. Just be like, get on the ground,
hit the ground,
sir.
Hit the ground. Stop, drop, and roll. Stop, drop, and roll.
The worst part was he went to the ground to intercept it. He had to get up in order to make that decision.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, just stay there. Just chill.
Yeah.
The game is over. Please stop it. The only way,
don't be a hero.
The only way for you to lose is for you to do exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
So I was stressing out a little bit, but obviously it worked out for the 49ers. We've got a Lions 49ers NFC Championship game.
Crazy.
Which is weird to say out loud.
Yeah.
The Lions have basically been bad your entire life, right?
Yeah, for the most part. Like, I did own a Lions jersey at one point.
Did you?
Because it was an Ndamukong Suh jersey.
Oh, so it was a Suh jersey. Okay, that makes sense.
So I would pay attention here and there, but yeah, not great. Not great ever.
No, they've been bad. I mean, and I am dramatically older than you. They've been bad my whole life.
Yeah.
I don't remember 91. I was 4 years old at that point. So I don't remember them being good in 91. There was like one, I want to say it was like 97. There was one like Barry Sanders, Scott Mitchell year where they were okay. But like that's it. That's the entire last 30 years of Detroit football is Scott Mitchell, 1991, and then just desert.
They weren't even that good in 1991. The reason why they were good was because other teams like the 49ers, the Bears, the Giants, the Cowboys, they were all on the low end of their, they were starting to rebuild and stuff like that. So you just had to have some team just kind of fall in there, and it happened to be the Lions, and I know they made it to the NFC Championship game that year against the Cowboys, but I mean, they really haven't been any good since like 1957. So anybody out there listening right now that remembers that, then, God bless you.
I mean, it sounds like you're familiar with 1957, Shano. What's going on there? You win the Wayback Machine.
I mean, that is the Wayback Machine because they've been bad. They've been bad pre-Super Bowl era.
Yeah, I mean, they famously have not won a Super Bowl. And you're looking at 3 playoffs appearances since 2000.
Man.
So you've got 2011, 2014, 2016. That is the entirety of their playoff experience this millennia.
Yeah.
And I was right, by the way, 97, Scott Mitchell and Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, listen, this is a cool story for them. And we talked about this on Friday, how I was sort of rooting for them. I'm obviously not anymore now that they're playing the 49ers, but it is such a weird, I mean, even the people that were high on Detroit coming into the year, I don't know that, I mean, did you really expect them to make the NFC Championship game?
No, but I think you definitely felt like a tide turning a little bit towards the end of last season. Like they had I think it was like 4 straight wins to end the year or something like that, or 3 straight wins. And even though that seems like kind of silly at the end of the year when it didn't mean a whole lot, you could just tell that like the quality of their play in general, like teams in the NFL, the last few games this season, when they don't mean
it's
much,
like trend,
it's like we'll just get through this.
Yeah,
that energy did not seem like it was there whatsoever. And I think the hype train a little bit was going with Dan Campbell and what they think he could do. So, I mean, obviously we've noticed that, but it was weird that it was kind of picking up at the end of last year. So I don't think I was entirely shocked that they had a decent season. Obviously what's happening now, like, is awesome for them. So it is crazy. And I also don't think I realized how quickly, I don't know why I didn't realize this, but for some reason I thought Dan Campbell had been there for a little bit more than 2 years.
Sure. Yeah.
And maybe it's just because I got confused with like Matt Patricia coming in and coming out pretty quickly. I don't know. But Dan Campbell, I mean, obviously everyone's loved him and loves what he's done for, that team and that program. But I don't think I realized it was 2021 that he came in.
Yeah. I mean, this is only his 3rd season there. They were 3-13 his first year. And, in a pretty short amount of time have turned into
100%.
again, what we've basically known our entire lives, the Lions to be, into a team in the NFC Championship. And as weird it is to say that they're in the NFC Championship from their play, not shocking, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, outside of, I guess, Dallas, I mean, the way the Eagles played down the stretch was brutal. So I don't know that anybody expected them to be here at this point. Them losing was not a surprise.
Yeah.
I sort of always assume Dallas is going to lose because that's what they do, right? Again, that's a team that in your lifetime doesn't win in the playoffs.
No.
Right? They get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then they always lose in the playoffs. And I barely remember them before that. Like, their glory years were, I was very, very young.
Okay.
And so most of my life, all I know is, the Cowboys are going to lose in playoffs. So when even though like they were probably the second best team in the NFC by the time the regular season was over, there wasn't really any part of me that's like, they're going to
that's threatening.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm watching them. I'm like, that's not a problem. We're fine
that's
here.
Okay.
It's going to be the same way. I mean, honestly, it's probably going to be the same way when Nebraska gets good. Younger people who haven't seen them be Nebraska before are going to be like, I mean, they're not scary.
Yeah.
It's like they might be that. Yeah, they're not having a nice year, but that's not scary.
It ain't scary.
You know what I mean? Like we do this all the time. And so the Cowboys, even though they are probably the second best team in the NFC, I'm like, that's not a thing that's going to happen. And so I don't know who I expected to be in the NFC Championship game. The Lions are the next logical conclusion. But you're just sitting there and you're like, it's weird to see NFC Championship game, Detroit Lions in the same sentence.
It was kind of cool that at halftime, though, Coach Campbell had his little interview and he's just basically, can't remember if he told the team or this just kind of was the message overall. It's like, there's no surprise that we're here. Like, that's for them. They're not surprised that they're here, which I thought was kind of cool because I think whether he's telling the truth or not, they don't play like they're shocked that they're there. Especially like yesterday, just watching the way that they kind of just found a way at the end of the game. It just didn't look like they were in panic mode necessarily. It just kind of felt like, I don't know, there's a subtle confidence about the group, and maybe it's just because they know they're kind of running with fire right now. But I just thought it was kind of cool that he shared that. He's like, this isn't a shock that we're here. Even though the rest of the world's like, whoa, Detroit's here.
And I mean, if it was a shock to them that they were there, they probably wouldn't be there.
100%. Right? Yeah. And of course, I'm not expecting the coach to be like, so we're shocked that we're here.
This is actually pretty
This
stunning.
is pretty crazy. No, but just, it was cool to hear it, like, just kind of what the inside locker room, just the subtle messages are. And, it'll be kind of, I think it's exciting when a new team rises to the top in a conference. So I'm curious just how long, dynasty is a really long, that's a really big word.
Probably not dynasty.
But lion's, whatever word that I'm trying to think of that's like short of a dynasty, but whatever, success, whatever.
A little successful
run. Long this will go in their new Lions era.
Yeah, I'm hoping at least for this year it's over this week. That's what we're hoping here as a 49ers fan. If they would like to win next year, that's fine.
Yeah.
I could use a 49ers Super Bowl. I wouldn't be mad about that. Your Kansas City Chiefs also survived a tough battle there against Buffalo.
Yeah.
As you are kind of experiencing that one, what's kind of going through your head? Because that was pretty back and forth to me.
Yeah.
The weird thing about Buffalo is if you look at their losses to Kansas City in the playoffs, like they could have won any of those games.
Yeah.
But they haven't.
Yep.
Right. And so I sit there from the perspective of, okay, I kind of used to coach. I like to, play armchair GM and stuff like that a little bit. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, this might be the hardest position to be in sports where there's no really measurable difference between the Bills and the Chiefs. I mean, yes, I take Mahomes over Josh Allen any day of the week. I take Andy Reid over Sean McDermott any day of the week. But in terms of how the results have played out, like I know people are going to throw like their DVOAs at me and be like, oh, see, the Chiefs are actually okay, fine. But when they go on the field, this thing is a coin flip every single time.
Yeah.
Essentially, right? And so if you're the Bills, you're like, okay, I mean, one or two breaks go our way, we win at least one of these games.
Yeah.
And yet you have won 0 of these games. In my mind, I'm like, okay, at what point do you say, hey, we have to stay the course? we're good enough to beat these teams versus looking at, hey, we never beat this team.
Yeah.
What we're doing isn't working.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I will say it was one of those games again, and it feels this way every single time we play the Bills in the playoffs. It's like basically whoever has the ball last is going to win the game.
And somehow Patrick Mahomes always seems to find a way to have the ball last.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I feel like the Chiefs have finally found their groove the last few weeks again, where like last week or 2 weeks ago when they played in -30, I was like, that's the best they've looked in
all year,
like
almost.
multiple weeks. And so I don't know, they just turn it on and postseason. Don't know. I mean, also there was receivers that made catches in the last 2 games that they haven't made all year long. So obviously that helps.
Slipping through their hands all year.
I don't know, but the entire time I was like, okay. I was pretty calm because I was like, whoever has the ball. Like I wasn't nervous in the first half of the game because like no matter what happens right now, like it doesn't matter until we get to the last
possession.
And then there was a moment where I got a little nervous right as we were heading into the fourth quarter because they had that scoring opportunity that turned into the whole touchback situation.
Yeah, with Hardman.
And then also, they had that pass interference call that gave us another set of downs, and we did nothing with it. So I was like, okay, now we've had between us and them 3 scoreless drives. All of a sudden, this is bucking the trend a little bit. And then, they're working their way down the field. And even though 2 minutes is enough time for Chiefs offense, I think not necessarily sufficient for what I've seen consistently enough this season that I was feeling uberly confident. But I was like, okay, at this point, we're going to get to overtime. However, I must say, I think I take credit in the missed field goal. So all night long, Tony Romo just absolutely jinxed the Chiefs left and right, like left and right.
Touchdown!
Yeah. He said something about Reed. Snead. He was like, he hasn't had a receiving touchdown on him all year. Literally the next play, bang. And then calls us one of the like most efficient offenses in the red zone or something, which was kind of interesting. But he says that, and then McCole fumbles.
Yep.
He said one more thing. I can't remember what it was. One more thing. So I did reverse here, and as Bass goes up to take the field goal, everyone was like, that I was watching the game with was, like, he's going to miss it. It's so windy, blah, blah. I'm like, no, he's the best field goal kicker there is. And then they put the stat on the board. I'm like, see, he's 9 for 9 in tie games. He's going to nail this one. We're going to overtime, whatever. I was like, he's clutch in these situations. He goes up, misses. And I was like, I don't know what I did. I don't know. But yeah, I continued the Tony Romo jinx. So reversed it a little bit.
Yeah, that's a classic reverse jinx you pulled there. Nice. Well done.
I did take a bow. Yeah. No, seriously. I just thought we were cracking up because we were like, every time he says something, I swear to God, every time Tony Romo says something, it's like opposite effect every time. Like I need a button for it almost.
I need Tony Romo to stop speaking. For
every time you say something, I'm like, no.
Chiefs Kingdom, I love you guys. This one's for you.
I will say, as I'm watching that game, the Hardman fumble, when that happened, I was like, ooh, this one might not go their way.
I agree.
Because usually when those things happen, those are kind of, especially like I said, these are teams that are essentially equals.
I mean, it was a clean football game.
Yeah.
In terms of that. So when the one turnover essentially at that point is on the Chiefs, it's like, ooh.
Like that's probably the thing that tips it the other way, right? Especially when it's like, okay, they could go in for the first 2-score lead of the game at that point. It would have been, I believe. Or the only 2, because I don't think any team led by more than a score at any point. So it would have been the only 2-score lead any team had gotten throughout that game. And all of a sudden, in a bang play that, I mean, his hip could not have been more than like a quarter of an inch off the ground. I do think it was the right call.
I do too.
But I mean, that thing couldn't have been more than, like, if he's wearing thicker pads on his hips, he is down, right?
Yeah,
like that's the margin we're talking about here. And when a play like that goes against you, you kind of go, ooh, this might not be our day, right? Their ability to kind of bounce back from that. And honestly, I know Patrick Mahomes was good as always. Travis Kelce was really good. Isaiah Pacheco was really good. Really salted that game away. Like, he was hugely important for them.
Yep.
But I walked away from that game thinking, like this might be the best Chiefs defense they've had.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like this is a Chiefs defense that can win games for them. Not because it always seemed like in the past it was like, hey, just don't lose the game. Defense, Patrick will take care of the rest.
Yeah.
Just please don't blow it.
Oh yeah.
Like,
defense has saved them multiple times this year.
Don't give up like a 50 burger.
Even
please.
with the problems they had yesterday at linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, this is the best I think their defense has looked throughout their run in these.
I think so too. I think that's been a huge component. Obviously, I think yesterday, for the most part, I mean, minus a game or two, has been the most consistently an offense has found ways to get points against this defense.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like they were just giving up things left and right, obviously.
No.
So, and that hasn't really been an issue mostly all season. But that's why it was also huge that the offense has kind of found its click a little bit, because the defense would make stops previous weeks and offense couldn't have been colder.
Yeah, you get nothing out of it.
No. And I also think too, like the past few weekends, they've just found a way to get the ball to Travis more. Where before it was like, oh, he's double covered or whatever. Like it's out the entire game. He's been out. Like he had one reception, whatever. Like I don't know if you saw the stat yesterday. His first receiving touchdown since week 11.
And I almost wonder, maybe I'm doing too much galaxy brain here, but I almost wonder if they're like, hey, we need to not like overuse him in the regular season.
Yeah.
Because he is in year 11 or whatever for a tight end. That's a really long time.
Yeah.
He takes a pounding in terms of not just in the pass game, but the run game as well, or like in the blocking game as well. I wonder how much of it's like, let's give Trav a little break here. Like he's going to be out there. We want to make sure he keeps chemistry, but we don't necessarily want to run him into the ground.
Right.
And B, I wonder how much of it was like, hey, we know Trav will be there when we need him. Let's try and see if we can get any of these receivers to the point where we're going to need them, right? Because if you just have Travis Kelce, you're not winning a Super Bowl.
Right.
If you need, and we've seen Rashee Rice become a lot more reliable.
Huge.
We have seen Isaiah Pacheco in the run game become more reliable. Even Scantling looked like a reasonable receiver instead of this guy that you're like, how do you even put him back out there, right?
For sure. He's
sort of started evolving into somebody that you're like, okay, I can live with this. So I wonder how much of it was just Andy Reid being like, hey, we have to have other receivers. Otherwise this isn't going to work.
Yeah. Also, Shane, I like the comment that you put on the screen. Did you like the last part?
Shane is right at once. For once.
TK, just
my guy.
Just throwing you under the bus there. That is segment number 1. Coming up next, we will set up the show, let you know who's going to be joining us today on Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Sets up a triangle to left side. Mahomes looks that way. He's going to go wide open, left side, caught. Kelsey caught around. Touchdown, Kansas City. Kelsey hasn't been that open since training camp in St. Joseph.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. I'm Ravi Lulla, Avery Howard here with me this morning. And we are getting you caught up on everything that happened over the sports weekend. Talked a lot of NFL in that opening segment. We will catch up a little bit more on those conference championship matchups as we move throughout the show. I want to tell you who our guests are today. Coming up at 8 o'clock, we're going to talk to our Monday regular, Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. He covers everything, but especially Nebraska here this time of year, Nebraska basketball in particular. Speaking of Nebraska basketball, we will talk to the voice of Nebraska basketball, Kent Pavelka, at 8:45. For people of an age like me, he was also the voice of Nebraska football for a stretch there in the 90s as well. So I always have a soft spot in my heart for Kent. Always love talking to him. We've got our guy Damon betting coming up at 9, and then we will wrap up the show with CJ Moore from The Athletic. He is a college basketball writer. We'll get caught up a little bit on the national college basketball scene with CJ. So that is the show for you here today. Before we jump into some of the other things like Creighton and Nebraska basketball and what else we saw this weekend, I wanted to kind of ask you how you're feeling about the matchup with the Ravens for the Chiefs, because I'll be honest, and probably a lot of this is the game that I saw the 49ers and Ravens play not that long ago, but the Ravens scare me.
Yeah.
And
I figured your question was going to be about Taylor Swift, but
listen, I love Taylor. I'm here for it. Like, I don't have a problem. I don't understand the problem.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a registered Swiftie.
Fair.
So when the whole thing started, I was like waiting for like the ball to drop, like, okay, what's actually like the situation? And so I think I was a little bit confused.
Sure. A little skeptical.
Now I'm like, it just is what it is. Like, it's just a part of the everyday thing now.
I mean, they're dating and she goes to his football games.
Yeah.
Like, that's.
I think the thing I've realized about the whole situation, not to get completely off topic, but I think before she was so like non-accessible. Like, she just, she was living this and she still does, but like, high status life, everything. She's on lockdown, basically.
One of the most famous people in the world.
Yeah, she can't do
very hard to get to her.
Yeah, very like every single thing is, like whatever. And she's at private events or award shows.
Do normal people stuff when you're that level.
And
of famous.
I think this has like made her seem more relatable to people.
Yeah.
And she's in a public eye every single week and arm's length distance away from normal people every single weekend at a football game. And I think just seeing the imagery every week of her hanging out, not in like a suite by herself. And I just think people have also that have been Swifties or in general, like we're an in-between fan of kind of seeing the, evolution of the situation. I think it's like, whoa, like, okay, there's like a normalcy side, even though you might have known like she has to live a normal life somewhere.
Yeah.
You're going to seeing it firsthand. And I don't know. I'm not a Swiftie, so I could be way off here. I don't know, but it just seems that way with people of that.
And she also got famous so young.
Yeah, true.
I mean, I think she started having songs on the radio at like 15, 16 years old.
Like that's the old young Taylor country is what I grew up on.
And so like maybe she hasn't had this much normalcy in her life ever. Like this might be the most normal thing she's done since she was in like middle school.
And I really love that we're considering dating Travis Kelce normal.
Right? Yeah. Like, oh, I'm dating
a Super Bowl champion.
Very famous NFL player. That's the most normal thing I've done.
Sure.
Right? But he's also very accessible.
Yeah. No, he is.
Like him and his brother are both very, which I love the like Jason Kelce, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just like ripping the shirt off, taking shots in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Like, love the whole Jason Kelce thing.
I know.
I might like Jason more than I like Travis.
Yeah.
And I like Travis, right?
Know.
But Jason's like, man, that's a dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they're both, I think partly because of the podcast, right?
Yeah.
They're both very accessible because you feel like you know a ton about them.
For sure.
And this might be the first time you feel like you know anything about Taylor Swift, like as a person, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that like Swifties, like they deep dive and stuff. And like, I like the music. I'm not obsessed or anything, but I listen to her music, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think this is probably the most I've ever known about her
For sure.
as like a human being. And that's, I don't know. It's nice to be like, oh yeah, she's a person.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to talk about
that's okay.
the whole Taylor Swift thing. Here.
But yeah, the Ravens make me nervous.
Yeah. Lamar Jackson is scary.
Yeah.
The Ravens are scary in general. And so I'm on the other side. I'm on the other side of the bracket here. So I'm in a super awkward position because I've played in not me personally. My favorite team has played in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes, and it didn't go well.
Yeah.
And he's only gotten better since then and scarier since then in those situations.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily want to play Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
I think the Ravens are better overall.
I do too.
So I'm sitting here being like, okay, who do I actually want to win this? Assuming the 49ers can get past the Lions, which is not a given. I'm not overlooking that, but really the AFC game has nothing to do with what happens in the NFC game. So I can ignore that part for now. I'm very torn between, do I want to face the maybe best team in the NFL in the Ravens? It's either the Ravens or the 49ers. And I mean, I was really hoping like in the first half, the Texans were going to like take care of the Ravens for me.
Yeah.
And we'd just be like, all right, we're cool here. Not a big deal. And then I was like, okay, so I think I want the Ravens to lose. And I was like, oh, that means you play Patrick Mahomes again, which is kind of at this point, kind of like asking to play Tom Brady in a Super Bowl. And I don't want that. So yeah, as a 49ers fan, I have no idea who to root for in this situation.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, the last time that the Chiefs have had to play Baltimore this late in the playoffs has been a while.
Yeah.
It's been Bengals or Bills, and that's just about it. Back and forth. And yeah, I mean, I guess it would have been 2020, maybe 2019, 2020. I remember there was a lot of Chiefs Ravens face like back to back. I feel like maybe I'm delusional, I can't remember, but I feel like the Ravens and Chiefs matchup was talked about a lot more. And when the Chiefs had to go there, I was pretty nervous, but at the time that was still like, can Lamar even win a playoff game kind of conversation?
Sure.
And I think this season's shifted that conversation a little bit, just in terms of like the body of work that they've put together. I'm obviously interested to see what happens just because it's just been it's been interesting to even be a Chiefs fan this year, just because at times it's like, this confidence of like, okay, the Chiefs are going to find a way.
They'll figure it out. Yeah.
But like watching them play, it's like, oh, like we're just like the next gear is just not there. And like just the cohesion's not there. And then they get to the playoffs and all of a sudden just things start to fall into place.
It's going to be the Chiefs. Don't worry about it. They're going to make the Super Bowl.
Tony.
They're going to make the Super Bowl. I mean,
it.
you've got so much. They got so much riding for them right now. They got Taylor Swift. The Super Bowl itself is going to be in Las Vegas. That's going to be the ultimate punch in the face to the Raiders right there.
Taylor's not actually playing, right? She's
so
as far as I know, at least.
I learned about I can't think of the words. Let's just put a rumor, hypothetical, that the logos for the Super Bowl. Have you seen this? So the two colors that are predetermined a year in advance for the newer like last 3 Super Bowl things that they've had have basically correctly predicted the 2 teams in the Super Bowl.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it was presented to me, and I was like, okay, let's look. And then I saw it, and I was like, oh, interesting. So the first year when it was Rams Bengals, it was like a orange and blue.
Okay.
And then last year it was a teal and a red.
Okay.
This year it is a red and a purple.
Okay, so that would mean Niners and Ravens.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about this.
But because I'm starting to fall into this trap a little bit of whatever this, hypothetical theory, I think conspiracy maybe even.
I think conspiracy.
Technically red and blue could be the purple.
It's true.
It is true.
You're not. I mean, it is.
I'm holding out hope because the purple is really dominant in this one. This year.
It's aggressively purple. There is barely even a hint of red there.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I don't know if I could call that a blue if you're looking for it to be the
like lions and
the Hawaiian blue.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty purple.
It is pretty.
I don't know.
It's not Hawaiian blue.
It's pretty purple. It's
anyway, but learned something new this weekend, and now I'm really interested in it.
Yeah, now
they're predetermined.
Well, now we know who's going to win. It's going to be a Ravens 49ers Super Bowl. This is what we found out today. Coming up next, we'll wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Deep back Gibbs, golf turns, Gibbs to Gibbs over the left side. There he goes inside the 30, inside the 25. Gibbs, speed, 10, 5, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions, turning on the Jets. Jahmyr Gibbs running away from the defenders, and the Lions are back on top.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube here from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. I'm Ravi Lulla, Avarie Howard with me this morning. Andrew, I believe, will be back tomorrow, as far as I know, if he survived his bachelor party in Vegas.
Yeah.
As long as we don't have a hangover situation there where he's stuck on the roof somewhere. But he is planning to be back tomorrow. Hopefully he's recovering today from his bachelor party weekend. But wanted to mention something here that outside of football that we've been pretty heavy on so far this morning, but and we'll get to Nebraska and Creighton basketball as the show goes on. But I'm sure you saw the video of Caitlin Clark.
I did.
And the Ohio State. I don't think it was a fan. I think it was somebody from their social media team as well.
Something of I
believe it was a media member.
Yeah.
So what I heard or read was that it was a member of either Ohio State social media team or a entity that was covering Ohio State, their social media team, trying to get out on the floor to I mean, very much like our own Mike Sauter did when Nebraska beat Purdue,
sure.
to get out onto the floor and get content from rushing the court, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Iowa's the number 2 team in the country in women's basketball. And as far as I know, Mike Sauter did not truck anyone on his way out to the floor. Although he may have.
Laughing, thinking, imagine if it was Mike Sauter who trucks Caitlin Clark.
It would have been, I mean,
a day he would never live down.
He also probably would have like talked trash to her, be like, yeah, what's up? Like Sauter definitely would have like stood over like he's a defensive back breaking up a pass, right?
Yeah.
You're like, what? D1 athlete? Come on. He 100% would have. You're laughing because you know it's true.
Well, she's down there, be like, do you like my shoes?
Be like, this is sweet kicks, though, right?
Like oh God, that's good.
But no, so in Ohio.
Sorry, Mike. I don't know how you got into this conversation.
So an Ohio State media member just collides with Caitlin Clark. As far as we know, everybody's okay.
Yeah.
But this is kind of just imagining Mike talking trash to Caitlin Clark after he lays her out is hilarious.
It's just really on brand. The way that you said, yeah, what?
he would do the kind of pop the chest out thing a little bit. I've seen him do that here. He just what? Usually it's when he's talking about the Jets. What? So,
okay, I'm sorry.
I was just imagining now Mike like laying out Casey. Like what? Just Mike Sauter just blindsides Casey Tominaga, and what just happened? What? You play more physical, Casey. What? Didn't see that screen coming, did you?
Okay. So Caitlin Clark goes down.
And she did kind of crumple, too.
She did.
She went down hard.
Blindside, that hurts.
Yeah. Kind of seemed like it maybe knocked the wind out of her a little bit. She didn't see it coming. But so I've seen, on Twitter and online and whatever, people sort of, every few years, it seems like we have this outcry over like, oh, we have to stop storming the courts. It's too dangerous, whatever. And like, listen, I've been near a court storming before. I haven't myself gone, but I've been very close to the floor as it happened. And I'll be honest, it can be a little scary. Yeah. There's a lot happening there.
Yeah.
So I get it. I get it from a dangerous situation for especially opposing, like the team that lost, trying to get off the floor.
Yeah.
It is not an ideal situation for them. But on the other hand, I can't recall a single real issue ever happening from this.
Yeah.
Like I maybe it just doesn't get reported, but in terms of players, this is probably there's a reason this is a story, right? Because it never happens.
For sure.
And even though she doesn't appear to be injured long term, it's like, oh, this could be really dangerous. And it can be. Don't get me wrong, it can be. But it really hasn't been.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of torn in the fact of, okay, I understand where you're coming from. This is not an ideal situation. If you're the opposing team, you want to get out of there as fast as possible so you're not caught up in this like melee mosh pit thing. And then on the other side of the coin, it's like, yeah, but nothing ever happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because after the Nebraska one happened with Purdue, it was pretty obvious that in the last minute, 2 minutes, 2 minutes might be a stretch, minute and a half, that Purdue, you weren't going to close that gap.
No. Yeah.
So I heard someone bring this up. They're like, with the last, when the shot clock is dwindling, whatever, at that point, like, have the players start to make their whatever, it's coming.
Their way off the floor.
You know what's happening there. There's 25 seconds left.
Yeah.
Usually the head coaches start shaking hands at that point anyway. And I don't know, how realistic that is for situations where you got a buzzer beater. It doesn't make, doesn't allow for a consistent, due process basically for everyone else.
Yeah, it's not always going to work. It's not always going to work.
When someone brought that up, I'm like, yeah, it's a pretty good point, because once the other way around and the team that's winning is, is supposed to win, like they're basically already walking off the court anyway. Yeah. They're already about to go shake hands anyway. It's coming. just, have them whatever. But yeah, I mean, Caitlin was she was pretty cool about it, I think, actually. And so I think she understands the situation. I mean, I think everyone that's said something about it, they know it's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's more or less like, is there a way that it could be contained a tad bit better? Like, can we direct traffic a tad bit better?
Can we make it like 10% safer?
Yeah. Like, can we have like a only this way and only this way or something?
Instead of, because at a certain point, and the fact of the matter is you're talking about like one security guard for every, I don't know, 250 people,
for sure.
Maybe.
Probably more. Yeah.
Right. Like that. I think that would be a low number probably, but we'll call it that for this. Like that one security guard is not stopping all of the people. Right. And so you've got a dozen security guards trying to stop several thousand people. Right. Like that's just not going to happen. Right.
No.
And so stopping it probably is not a practical answer, but if you focus those dozen security guards on getting the opposing team out, you're probably okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so you brought up that Nebraska game, and this is kind of why I'm pro court storming.
Yeah.
It makes it feel more real.
For sure.
Like it makes the upset feel very tangible.
Yeah.
In a way that if you're just like, oh, great, they won the game, and you go home, you get in your car, like it's just a different.
Yeah.
I think the only time at Creighton they stormed the court was when they won the Big East title, regular season title, that I can remember at least. And I didn't storm the court, but I was sitting very close to the floor. No big deal.
Totally.
And it made it feel more real. Like it made it feel more tangible. It's like, oh yeah, Creighton just won a championship, right? And I feel the same way about like tearing down the goalposts. Like, I don't care. Like, tear down the goalposts. Have fun. Take them, throw them in the river. Like, whatever people do with them, right? Go put it in front of your frat house. Like, congratulations, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, like it's part of the thing that makes college sports feel
100%.
Like more connected to you. And so I don't want to lose that, but I also am old now. And so I also understand, oh yeah, somebody could get hurt doing this.
Yeah. It's almost just like there has to be like some sort of guidelines or something, which I know the whole point of it actually being kind of exciting is there is really no guidelines at that point. It's like we get to go be with the team and that's how it's going to be. I don't know. I mean, obviously when you see an athlete of Caitlin Clark caliber kind of go down, it obviously is going to probably,
it's scary, right?
Yeah. Raise a little bit more concern. So I don't know. I'm interested to see maybe how the conversation is addressed. I really hope they don't go like the NCAA baseball route and basically take away everything. I really hope that doesn't happen. I don't think even if I think court storming becomes banned, I don't know if people will follow that, quite frankly.
I mean, technically the tearing down the goalpost is banned, but like how well does that work?
Yes, exactly. Right? So I just hope they don't take everything away if it becomes a conversation at the end of the season when they have to address things. Yeah. I don't know.
Here at Hurrdat Sports Radio, we are pro court storming.
Yeah, we are.
Just be responsible.
Yeah, be smart.
Be safe.
Yeah.
And use your dozen security guards to make a little tunnel and get the other team out of there.
Yeah, or your security that comes with you. I don't know. It got brought up after the game. They're like, you should just have the guys start. You knew it was coming. You know it was coming. There was what was it? A 9-point difference or something?
Yeah,
or 8 points something.
It was not. I mean, it wasn't something that was coming down to a buzzer beater.
No.
And honestly, the biggest issue is the players on the court themselves, right? Because you can't take them off.
For sure.
But the referees, like whether Iowa, I don't know if Iowa had a timeout or whatever, but if you're the Iowa coach or if you're the refs, you should be able to pause the game or like have a conversation with the other coach and be like, hey, do you want to get your players out of here?
Yeah.
Like, because using Nebraska Purdue as an example again, you knew.
Yeah.
Pretty early.
Yeah. 88-72 was the score.
Yeah. Like that game is not close.
No.
Right. You can get at least your entire bench out.
Yeah.
And then security can focus on getting the 5 players on the floor out safely. Right.
Yeah.
But like with Nebraska Purdue, you knew that was going to happen a long time before it happened. Like you could feel it in the arena. You can kind of predict these things. Most of the time it's not on a buzzer beater. Like that's not generally when this is happening.
Yeah.
I don't know. Pro court storming, but let's figure out a little bit better way. Like let's make it 10% safe.
100%.
That's all I'm asking
for.
Glad Caitlin Clark is okay, and hopefully either Nebraska or Creighton will have more reasons to storm the court soon. We will talk Nebraska with our guy Sam McKewon coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. And that kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
Kicking off hour number 2 with our friend Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. Sam, how are you this morning?
Good. Happy late January. How are you?
We are doing well. I wanted to, kick off a place that I wish I was over the weekend in this late January, and that was the Polynesian Bowl. Definitely would have preferred to have been there. For some reason, I don't know if I missed the assignment, but Hurrdat Sports didn't feel the need to send me to Hawaii to cover that. But as you saw, 3 future Huskers in that game. Obviously, Dylan Raiola got a lot of the headlines. Carter Nelson maybe had the best game, and then Preston Taumua obviously was there as well, the Hawaii native. Did you get anything out of that game? Was there anything that stood out to you, or was it just kind of like, oh, it's cool that Nebraska has people on the stage?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a hard setting for offensive players.
Sure.
There's not a lot of team chemistry. There's not a lot of time to kind of sync things up, and so the defense is invariably ahead. There were a ton of turnovers in the game, but I thought Dylan had a couple of good throws. I thought he managed the pocket well. I thought there were a couple of improvisational moments that were pretty impressive. And, we'll see. I mean, obviously, he has to do that at the collegiate level against collegiate players. But, there were some good things to see there. Carter Nelson, I think, is an interesting player and has really prepared himself for the role that Nebraska says they want him to have. So they want him to be a player who is a threat at every level. So if you wanted to break it into 3 levels, it would be behind the line of scrimmage and at the line of scrimmage, sort of the intermediate route, and then the deep stuff. And he's actually, his high school career prepared him for that. He's run a lot. He's done a lot of things. And I thought, he showed some of those skills. Obviously, those players are few and far in between in college football, but and even Brock Bowers, who's a terrific player, did carry the ball. He was a tight end. So I'll be curious to see how they use Carter Nelson and the ways in which he's able to help the team.
Sam, how have you looked at Carter Nelson's first couple experiences with 11-man football? Obviously, he had the previous All-American game and then the Polynesian Bowl. I know that was something that people had been bringing up a lot about maybe his adjustment period to playing not just college football, but a different style of football in 11-man. Have what you've seen in the last couple sort of exhibition games made you rethink maybe his timetable at all?
I thought his timetable was, pretty much immediate anyway.
Okay.
So if they feel like he's somebody that they need a red shirt because they need to bulk him up, okay. But, the things they're asking him to do are not necessarily all that different related to 8-man or 11-man high school football. There's a difference between high school and college. Mm-hmm. And so that adjustment will have to be the exact same for him as it would have been for a player at the 11-man level. So, the adjustment that Carter Nelson has to make and Isaiah McMorris has to make is the same from high school to college. So, I think that's probably where it stands. But he's very talented, and I'll be curious to see how it all goes for him here this spring.
As we speak of just exciting updates and new additions to teams, I saw the article you published yesterday just about kind of the landscape of the Big Ten in the offseason, and so much of it has changed. It's only January. Has there been anything that's really stuck out to you amongst the other teams in the Big Ten, on top of just the depth that Nebraska's added, or just what surprised you the most, or what maybe you are anticipating to change the most as we get into 2024 football season in the Big Ten?
There's a lot that Michigan can't do, Avery, in that because they don't know what their coach is going to do.
Yeah.
And so when the transfer portal opened up for Alabama after Nick Saban retired, Michigan can't really make any run at a player. Mm-hmm. They can't go after a guy. They have to kind of sit there. And I think I would say with some confidence that if Michigan knew that Jim Harbaugh was going to be the coach, I think they would have made a move for Julian Sand for sure. Mm. The quarterback that dropped Alabama is going to Ohio State, which also has another 5-star quarterback.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I thought that was notable, to be really honest with you. and Ohio State really played aggressive. I mean, they obviously added the quarterback. They added Caleb Downs. They've done a nice job of trying to stay on top of things. They hired an offensive coordinator in Bill O'Brien. You know, he's getting crapped on a little bit right now, but that's obviously a terrific hire. I mean, he's very good at his job. It's kind of like when Ohio State hired Greg Schiano and everybody had to look around in the national media and act like it was a bad hire, and it wasn't a bad hire. It was a great hire. And Bill O'Brien's going to be a great hire too. You know, regardless of what he thought of Jalen Milroe 2 years ago, is immaterial to what he's going to do at Ohio State. So I think Ohio State's had a very good offseason so far. Michigan's just had to sit there and wait and decide, let Harbaugh decide. And then you have Iowa, who's still looking for an offensive coordinator too. Yeah. And that needs to get resolved because Iowa it's not that far away in some areas from being a really good program. They need a coordinator to come in and create a vision that actually wins the biggest games. And obviously Kirk Ferentz' kid didn't do that. Iowa also hired its athletic director. Beth Getz got a 5-year deal. She's great. I would have, if Nebraska had not hired Trev Albert, that would have been my number 2 pick. I think she's a terrific, lots of Big Ten experience, will do really well there. You know, may ruffle some feathers within the football program, but already made what I would consider to be a terrific decision with Brian Ferentz getting, basically firing him. That was smart on her end. And so I think they made a really good hire there. And I think they're going to like what that becomes over the course of the next decade.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, I was thinking about that Ohio State situation and with the quarterback room specifically. You mentioned the 2 5-stars. They also brought in Will Howard. They also have 2 highly regarded guys that are in the room from before. I mean, obviously, some of those guys have to stay because Will Howard doesn't have anywhere else to go at this point. But, I mean, this is a pretty rare situation in today's landscape of college football to have this many kind of highly regarded guys in the room at once. How do you think that ends up playing out for Ohio State?
Somebody will transfer in spring. Obviously, it won't be Will Howard. Ohio State's going to have the best of both worlds where they're going to be able to tell their freshman quarterback, listen, we got a guy for this year. You can learn to develop. You're on the Jordan Love plan or the Aaron Rodgers plan or whatever you want to call it. So you can sit over there and wait. You're not playing this year. And, I think on some level, Julian Sayin can say, well, I knew that I went there with my eyes wide open. I don't know if Aaron Nolan can say that. And the other guy, he had his chance. He played against Missouri, and he didn't play well. One of them got hurt, and the other one, no. So, and I think they're both still there, right? Devin Brown's still there, and then the other guy that came in, I can't remember.
Lincoln Kineholz?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're still there.
Yeah, it didn't look like anything.
No.
It didn't look good. Now, it's worth watching Lincoln because he's obviously from South Dakota, and Nebraska got on him late in the process. So we'll see. I mean, they got a bunch of blue chips there. They'll figure it out. I've said this already once, and I'll go over all the Big Ten teams here in February when spring football begins. Will Howard is an interesting choice because there are things that Will brings to the table. I've watched a lot of Kansas State football. He is a Josh Allen type player. He's not as good as Josh Allen, not as athletic, but he hits a lot of deep throws. He's not the most accurate guy in the short to intermediate range, but he can run. And so, like, how Ohio State incorporates him into the offense. What I would say of Kyle McCord is he actually was a pretty accurate quarterback from short to intermediate, but he labored to make the hardest throws on the field, and that was a change from what Ohio State had experienced with C.J. Stroud and Fields and Haskins, the late Dwayne Haskins. All 3 of those guys could do all the hard things. McCord wasn't great at that. Howard is really good at the hard things. And so I think Ohio State wants to bring that deep throw back into play, and they'll be able to do it with a strong-armed guy like Howard.
Sam, I want to touch one more thing on the Big Ten here before we move on to some Nebraska basketball. You mentioned the situation with Michigan and Harbaugh. My assumption is he's going to be coaching in the NFL next year, but again, that's just my assumption. If he does move on, is there a name at the top of your mind that you're like, that's the guy they should look at in replacing Jim Harbaugh?
I think they would probably hire, Sharon Moore, the offensive coordinator and offensive line coach. I don't know that there's any immediate fix outside of that. I think Ward Manuel would give more of the opportunity. He's already 1-0 against Ohio State. I think that's, he legitimately led the team in the last month on game day.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a sense that he can do the game day coaching. And I think the thing that Jim Harbaugh's greatest strength, at least at the collegiate level, isn't something that can be duplicated by Moore or really anybody else. But it might be best duplicated by a guy who's already there. And that is sort of this maniacal, certitude that Harbaugh brings to the table. It generates belief in his players. And then they kind of have that belief. I don't know if there's a guy outside that program that's really going to bring that there more than Moore would. And so I think he would get an opportunity. I think Michigan very much wants Harbaugh to return. And I think, I could see the Chargers hiring Jim Harbaugh because they need something that, they don't make much of an impact in that market. I have no idea why the Falcons would hire Jim Harbaugh over Bill Belichick. And I just don't think that would be a wise move. I think Belichick can make you better pretty quickly, even if you don't have a great quarterback. Harbaugh probably needs that player. And, we'll see. I think there's some teams that want to at least kick the tires on Harbaugh. But, the Vikings did that a couple of years ago, and the Vikings wisely walked away from it. And they were like, you know what? We got this other guy. We like him. And so Harbaugh needs to be hired by somebody. And I'm not sure that there are a ton of franchises that want to deal with that. I just don't think there are. And you can see the success of some of these young coaches in other spots. D'Amico Ryans in Houston. And I think you're going to see teams continue to go young. Mike McDaniel in Miami. Harbaugh's 60 years old. I know he doesn't act like he's 60, but you're going to have to really find a sweet spot for this guy, or otherwise you're going to see teams and owners continue to go with the 30-something crowd because that's been really successful. And I don't think you can just turn away from that easily.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, switching gears here to Nebraska basketball. Before we get to the actual game, I did want to bring up, obviously this was the kind of the weekend honoring Danny Nee down at Nebraska. And the thing that I keep thinking about with Coach Nee was how successful he was at Nebraska and how no one really else has been able to replicate that really before or since. What in your mind did he do so well that translated to Nebraska that nobody else has been able to figure out?
A couple of things. One, he was able to unlock Omaha in the recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
And that was at the time that he was at his best. They had Eric Strickland and Terrence Badgett, and Woolridge was there for a year. They had local kids. Ron Boone, obviously from Omaha. Jerron decided to come to Nebraska. That's kind of like a local Omaha recruit. Jerron could have gone other places, but he went here. And then, Eric Pikowski was from South Dakota, but really from Western Nebraska. Chubbuck. So they did a really good job of recruiting, within locally. He had an assistant on his staff named Jimmy Williams, and Jimmy Williams was an expert at getting centers. And so from the time that Jimmy Williams joined the staff until I think he may have left right before he got fired, or I can't remember. Maybe he left after. But let's rattle off the centers. Rich King was there, Mikey Moore, Derek Chandler, Tony Farmer, Vincent Hamilton, Monty Friend. These are really good players. Really, really good. No joke. I mean, Mikey Moore was in the NBA for 15 years. And Kamani could have been. Kamani had other things, and but he ended up playing in Europe for a while until he had his issues. But they had super talented post players. Stephon Bradford. So they were able to recruit really, really good posts. And then he was able to supplement it with the right city guards. Jamar Johnson in the 90s, Henry T. Buchanan back in the 80s, and then Teron Lue, of course, the 3 years that Teron was there. getting those players, and Cookie Belcher too. So like a lot of it, honestly, was the players. It was, Danny was, I guess, he had some moments coaching wise. I remember he coached the pants off of Dan Altman one year in the late 90s, 97 or 98. He put a defense on an Altman team, and Creighton didn't know what to do. Rodney Buford was on that Creighton team, so it wasn't a bad Creighton team. So he had his moments coaching wise, but I think Danny would tell you it was the player, and he was a hell of a recruiter. I think that's what made the difference, is that he got kids to come here, and then when they came, and I covered the team in the mid to late 90s, so the 96 team that went to the NIT and lost to UConn, the 97 team that went to, 98 team that went to the NCAAs, and then the following team that should have been in the NCAA tournament but wasn't. I wouldn't describe Danny Nee's relationship with every player as like warm. There was combativeness. I think there was, there was a lot of friction. There was a lot of tension, especially after the walkout. But, when they got onto the court, they played their butts off. And I think that's what made Danny Nee special, is that he could get the guys to play when they absolutely had to play, and he got pretty darn good players. And I think that's the combination that really, really matters. Even his last team, which was not very good, and it got him fired, that team had more talent than the team that Nebraska is putting out on the floor now. They didn't have any chemistry, and there was a bunch of guys playing as individuals. That team had talent. So recruiting, that's what Danny Nee did better than any coach since him.
You mentioned some of the success stories in the late 90s when you got to cover them. Just in that Nebraska basketball era and the Coach Nee era, any favorite memory or story come to mind for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were, Nee himself, his Monday or Tuesday press conferences were in a little Devaney room where they have the Devaney press availability now, actually. But back then it was a table and everybody kind of eat lunch, and he'd come in, and he'd kind of usually come in a huff, and he'd sit down and make jokes. And he would joke, he was good at that. And back then Lee Barknick was the beat writer for the World-Herald, so he always kind of got the first question and the last question. And it was, you could kind of, there was just a culture around the program. Again, I wouldn't describe it as like, it was a little dysfunctional, but that, and then of course Lou. I mean, Toronto Lou is one of the, I don't know, 3 best players in school history. And maybe that's overdoing it. For me, that's not overdoing it. I mean, I think Piakowski and Lou and Stu Lance. That's probably it. And so watching him play was special because he was a special player, and his relationship with Danny was interesting because Lou is, basically the model citizen. Perfect off the court, perfect on the court. And so to watch him, the contrast between him and Nee was always, Toronto always said the right things and was about the right things, and Nee was kind of a wild card. So it was interesting to watch their contrast, but they fit. So yeah, those are the memories that I have. It was a fun time. It was fun, and it was a funny time because the guy liked to make jokes.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, let's move to this year's team and their win against Northwestern over the weekend. How important to you was that particular game for Nebraska to kind of get back on track after having lost 3 of their last 4? That road schedule for the Big Ten has still been really tricky for Nebraska. How important was that Northwestern game?
Important. That's a team that Nebraska struggles to beat and hasn't beaten for a while. Not sure they've beaten them in the Hoiberg era. And so I think that was a good win for Hoiberg and a good win for the program. Northwestern doesn't do anything fancy, but they play, and Nebraska beat them. I think tomorrow night's game is really important, and Nebraska should win the game. I think they match up really well with Ohio State, and now Ohio State's athletic. And they're athletic. They have athletic talent that Nebraska probably lacks, but I think Nebraska's a better executing team. And I think on its home court, Nebraska is a hard team to beat. So I think it's going to be important for Nebraska to play really well tomorrow night. I'd say tomorrow night's game is huge because Ohio State's going to the NCAA tournament. I don't know if Northwestern's going or not. I think it's going to be a true bubble. Ohio State will be there. So I think that's probably something to watch tomorrow night. Juwan Gary will be back when he's back. I don't know if it's going to be right away. I do think they can win games without him, as they showed on Saturday. And I thought it was good. This is a bubble team, right? You can start to think about what that's going to look like and feel like over the next 4 to 6 weeks. The team's going to feel the pressure. They're going to feel it, and it's going to be every night. It's going to feel like that, and they're going to have to play through it. And that's part of the fun part. Is both the men's and women's teams at Nebraska are going to have to work through the pressure of knowing that every win and every loss could put them on the right or the wrong side of the bubble. Whereas at Creighton, that's not the pressure there. Creighton's pressure is, can we play so well down the stretch here? And I don't know if they can, but can we play so well that we basically play our way into a 2 or a 3? And then you're thinking about how you set yourself up for the following weekend. And that's not really the Creighton women's issue, but they want to do that too. Let's play ourselves into an elite seed. And for the Creighton women, it's can we play ourselves into a 4 and host 2 games? And for the men, it's can we play ourselves into a 2 or 3 and set ourselves up for weekend 2, which is where Creighton wants to make its money this year. Where Nebraska's story is every game in and game out, you're going to have a little needle. It's like, are they in or are they out for both the men and the women? And it'll be fun to watch them play through that pressure because that is real stuff. And you watch Nebraska football; they were on the cusp of a bowl for a month, and they couldn't handle it very well.
Yeah,
the Michigan State game they did not handle that well, and I think they would all say that was their worst game of the year. So Nebraska's playing with pressure is something that I think the Nebraska men's basketball team has to learn, and they haven't played with that pressure since Tim Miles last year, and they didn't handle it very well that year either.
Yeah, as we've seen, on the road, like you say, that pressure, they can't find a way to execute much on the road. At home. Home court's kind of a different story, but I feel like before this Northwestern game on Friday, we discussed, Juwan Gary being out. You obviously have the 3-point production from K-State, but it felt like we've been waiting for a player to really step up. And I know Mike Sauter on Friday said, waiting for Josiah Alec to kind of become that dominant force down low. And I think we saw a little bit of that against Northwestern, 15 points, 5 rebounds, kind of made more of just a presence. Do you feel like he has to be a guy that just really steps up and becomes much more dominant to help in these close games that Nebraska keeps having?
Yeah, I think so. I think Josiah would say it really better than I can. He's a really good player. He just needs to play within himself. And so sometimes he gets a little ahead of things, and offensively that hurts him. When he plays within the flow of his game, he's a double-digit scorer, and he knows that, and he played like that on Saturday.
Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Great stuff, Sam. We appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, take care.
Wanted to touch on a couple things that Sam mentioned about the Big Ten landscape coming up. We'll hit that here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 We will be back.
I-4.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
I formation, toss to McCaffrey. Big hole, and he runs out across the 30, breaks a tackle. He's gone. Touchdown! CMC!
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and we are just a couple days away now from your Omaha Supernovas kicking off the inaugural Pro Volleyball Federation match against the Atlanta Vibe. That's on Wednesday, January 24th at 7 p.m. at the CHI Health Center. You can get your single game or season tickets at supernovas.com, and you'll get a chance to witness world-class talent as the Supernovas take on the Vibe. You'll have NCAA champions, All-Americans, Olympians. You will have the best collection of volleyball talent you will ever see. Join the volleyball movement sweeping across the country and see your Major League Volleyball team, the Omaha Supernovas. Again, supernovas.com for tickets and more information. Wanted to touch on something that Sam said about Michigan, because obviously they want Jim Harbaugh back.
Yeah.
I disagree that NFL teams would have to be sort of out there to hire him because he was very successful in the NFL.
Right.
He made 3 NFC Championship games. He made 1 Super Bowl. And I believe his worst year, looking it up now, I believe his worst year was 8-8, and that's what got him fired. What really got him fired was he's kind of difficult to work with sometimes, and that there was sort of a power struggle in the organization. But this is a guy that has been dramatically more successful in the NFL than a lot of coaches that get next opportunities, right? He's been successful everywhere he's gone. His record in the NFL is 44-19. That's almost a 70% winning percentage.
Yeah.
He is a wildly successful NFL head coach. And he's a wildly successful college head coach. He's just a good football coach.
Yeah.
So I disagree that an NFL team would have to be a little crazy to hire him. I do think I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. I do think the Chargers are the best fit because of their personnel, because of Justin Herbert's skill set versus what we've seen Harbaugh coach well out of the quarterback position. But I think any team with an open position should want Jim Harbaugh. I think he's probably at this point, I don't know if he's a better candidate than Bill Belichick, but I have more questions about Bill Belichick at this stage of his career than I do about Jim Harbaugh. Okay.
Yeah.
So that being said, I think it's more likely than not that he is not at Michigan next year. Because even if it's not the Chargers, the Falcons are interviewing him for a second time. I believe he's interviewed somewhere else as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you're any NFL franchise, it makes sense to me that you want to hire Jim Harbaugh. That makes me wonder, okay, who should Michigan hire? Sam mentioned Sharon Moore, the offensive coordinator, as the logical successor to Jim Harbaugh. But we actually already have someone who has done that job. And that's David Shaw, former Stanford head coach.
Yep.
David Shaw has literally been the successor to Jim Harbaugh before. And I know you're going to look at his record and say, okay, but what happened those last 4 years? And I'm happy to tell you what happened those last 4 years. Stanford re-tightened their admission requirements because they had loosened them for Jim Harbaugh. That's the only reason he took the job or kept the job. And they had allowed that to stay with David Shaw. And then they got a new president, I believe, in 2017, 2018, and they tightened those back up. So they had made some exceptions, like a lot of schools do, to help their student athletes get enrolled. They tightened those back up, and you couldn't get players at Stanford anymore. It's the same reason they were terrible before Jim Harbaugh, and it was the same reason that David Shaw fell off. But David Shaw had 8 years before that happened. He never won fewer than 8 games. He won double-digit games 5 times. 5 out of his 8 years, he won at least 10 games.
Okay.
And then the other 3 were 9 wins, 9 wins, and 8 wins. This is a guy that was very, very successful at a place that is maybe more like Michigan than most jobs in the country in terms of academic requirements, things like that. Now, we obviously know Michigan is a little bit more lenient on letting their coaches recruit athletes than Stanford is, right? Because Stanford basically operates like an Ivy League school.
Yeah.
For a while there, when Harbaugh was good and when David Shaw was good, they didn't operate like an Ivy League school. I think David Shaw makes a ton of sense in Michigan.
Yeah, I'm just curious because the bar for Michigan is just so high at the moment.
It is.
And I'm just curious if 9 wins, 8 wins.
If that's a big enough name.
That and just like in general, if like because of how much change is going to happen for Michigan, JJ McCarthy's out. Let's just say, obviously, we're talking about a new head coaching position. Does that bring other assistant new coaches with him? If their old offensive line OC coach goes, or doesn't get the head. I'm saying if he doesn't get the head coaching job, does he say there? I'm out?
Same with Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator.
Yeah. So I'm curious at that point. Then let's just say a 9 and 8 win season comes with David Shaw to Michigan. Does that suffice for where they think their program's at? Do they realize that it's they've got to turn over again. I don't know. So I feel like it's an interesting, I mean, no matter the situation ever, putting a new head coach in a Power 5 school is always crazy. But I think when you add just the success Michigan had last year with the whole mess and then a Jim Harbaugh on top of it, it really is an interesting situation.
I also think Michigan is a really unique football program in the sense of the way they think of themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Because Michigan is very proud of their academics, as they should be. It's a very good school. But they actually care about that, even within the athletic department, right? So part of the appeal of David Shaw is like, okay, he's already led a program similar to this.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same kind of thing at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Right? Guys that have, although Notre Dame sort of puts athletics in a different bucket more so than Michigan does.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you're an SEC school, you're an ACC school, you're just trying to hire a football coach, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are just you don't care if you're Alabama, if Kalen DeBoer can navigate the admissions requirements.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever they may be, I think for Alabama, it's just being literate is the admissions requirement. But the admissions requirement for Alabama, they don't care about that. They're like, how good of a football coach are you? Michigan does care about that, like pretty dramatically. And so I don't know that you can just go out and get a good football coach, right? I don't know if you can go out and just get a guy. So hiring from within makes sense for that reason, right? But there's a reason they're so obsessed with like the Michigan man thing. David Shaw is a Stanford man, not that different in terms of the things they value.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why it's a weird job for me if it comes open again, because the one time they kind of went outside that mold with Rich Rodriguez, they fired him as soon as possible.
What do you think Jim Harbaugh is best at as a head coach? Like, what is his attribute that has made him successful?
That's a good question.
Because I feel like when we talk about Jim Harbaugh, we don't talk about like what makes him a great coach. We talk about his quirkiness, or we talk about the similar storyline he's had at most places and how just like some fishy things usually lie under the water. But he always finds a way to get it done. And like, no matter if people are questioning him, Jim Harbaugh can. But when it comes to like, let's just say he did. Let's just say he was retiring the same way Nick Saban was this season. Everyone very quickly was like, Nick Saban does this. His secret talent is this. He's really good at developing this. And then when it comes to Jim Harbaugh, it's like, Jim Harbaugh, he'll find a way. I don't know. I'm just curious, like, what his best attribute is as a football mind or football head coach. And I know he comes from a lineage of coaches in the football world. But it just makes me, I just don't feel like that's not at the top of conversation when you hear the word Jim Harbaugh head coach.
That's a super interesting question, and one that I haven't necessarily thought about that much. My instant reaction is kind of quarterbacks and offense, because that's his background, right? Obviously, he was a quarterback in the NFL. He like mentored Andrew Luck into being Andrew Luck. He mentored Josh Johnson at San Diego into being an NFL quarterback from a pretty low level of football. But that's not really a ton of what he's done at Michigan. He did it with Colin Kaepernick at San Francisco. You save that question for DB.
Okay.
We're going to talk to DB at 9. I want to ask him that question because that's a really good question. And
food for thought.
Yeah, it's something I hadn't thought about. Coming up next, though, we're going to talk to Kent Pavelka, the play-by-play voice for Nebraska basketball, and we will talk to him about this current team, about Danny Nee, and everything in between here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Slicing and dicing the Purdue defense. Nebraska from the high post and passes by Alec. And you hear the Go Big Red chant.
Get this ball in bounds. Let this crowd storm the floor, baby.
Gillis into Braden Smith. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And for the first time in 41 years, Nebraska knocks off the top-ranked team in the country, and they are storming the floor. They are storming the floor. They are storming the floor.
Love it.
Sign your name, Fred Hoiberg. There's your signature win.
They're partying here in Lincoln, Nebraska. What madness.
We are wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, and I want to remind you that when you're driving, using your seatbelt saves lives and prevents injuries, but only if it is properly worn. Make it click. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. I'm Ravi. That's Avarie Howard. We're here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, live on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and we are joined now by the voice of Husker basketball, Kent Pavelka. Kent, how are you this morning?
I'm doing good. Doing well.
Kent,
Huskers won Saturday. Why wouldn't I be?
I was going to say, it seems like you had a really good weekend. Let's start with the off-the-court activities first. Obviously, alumni weekend, kind of Danny Nee was being featured and honored. I want to kind of put you in a time machine here, take you back to the Danny Nee era where you called a bunch of those Nebraska basketball games. What is your favorite Danny Nee memory? At least one that you can share on the air.
Oh yeah, well, you just took away about 99% of them. I suppose the thing that just flashed in my mind, if I had time to think about it, I might come up with something different. But after we won the NIT, after they won the NIT championship, that 95-96 team, I remember going to his suite in the hotel we were at, and there was a big party, and that was pretty cool. But there's a lot of them, like you say, some of which shall be buried with both of us.
Ken, what was do you have like a favorite? You mentioned the NIT championship. Do you have kind of a favorite on the court moment in your time calling Danny Nee's games? I know you weren't there for the end of his career in terms of his last few years at Nebraska, but do you have kind of a moment or a call that sticks out to you from those days?
I suppose maybe that 93-94 team that, was honored this weekend, winning the Big Eight tournament, those three games combined. And then, the last seconds of that game, of the championship game. But there were a lot of really, really good games and really successful teams and seasons. And they beat a lot of good teams. I guess if I ever write down anything that might resemble a book, I would do a little more research on that. But it was just great to see him back this weekend, and all the guys from the beginning of my career, some of them preceding my career. And I thought Danny needed to get back because he didn't leave under the best of circumstances, and I wanted to make sure that he understands how highly regarded he is, now that, we can look back on those days and see that they were the best days, period, end of sentence, the best days.
In terms of favorite memories and favorite calls, where does the Purdue game a few weeks ago rank just in recent history and memory for this Nebraska basketball era?
Well, it depends on what you define as recent. Yeah, this was at the top. This is a top 5 game, I think. Probably number one or number 2. There was a game in 2014. We beat Wisconsin in the last regular season game. Everybody knew Nebraska had to win to get to the NCAA tournament. And so it was called No Sit Sunday. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but everybody stood the whole game, and they knocked off Wisconsin, and that was pretty special too. Both were court storms.
We're talking to Kent Pavelka, the play-by-play voice for Nebraska basketball. Kent, when you look at this year's Nebraska team, obviously they've got that huge win over Purdue. They've struggled a little bit on the road, but overall, they've shown marked improvement from some of the past few years of Fred Hoiberg teams. What have they done this year that's impressed you the most?
Well, you and talked about compared to the last few teams, better players, different kind of player, a different culture, I think is responsible for who they are today compared to what they were the first 4 years, first 3 years, because last year was pretty good. So, I mean, it's just a whole different cast of characters in terms of the staff and as I say, the culture, the kind of players he's gotten. I just admire the way they play, and I think the fans have fallen in love with them. I didn't coin the word, but I applied the word. I think that when they play relentlessly, that word is stacked with meaning, and this team does, when they do that, and they play with focus and intelligence and attention to detail, and without a hiccup for 40 minutes, they're pretty hard to beat. And I think that they did that against Purdue. Obviously, they did it against Michigan State. They did it against Kansas State. I can go back and talk about more games, but that's the point. Is that that this team is? I think that's why they're admired. You can feel it when you watch them play, and that's an admirable quality. But they've got talent in addition to that style and that application of effort, and the mix of the talent and how hard they play, and when they play with focus like that, it's pretty fun.
You touch on culture, and I think that's the big interesting piece about this team. Like you just said, it makes them admirable. And I'm curious, because do you feel like the culture on this team is a top-down situation? It comes from head coach. It permeates throughout the staff, or do you think that's something that's just kind of been set within the players on this team? Or where do you think the good culture comes from?
All of the above.
Okay.
I think it's all of the above. Fred has redone his staff, and from the top on down, it's just a great organization, a group of people, and they've gotten the kind of player that maybe goes under the radar a little bit, where the blue bloods probably aren't recruiting the guys Nebraska's got, but proof's in the pudding. They can play, and so it's just a whole different look, a whole different feel, a whole different reality, really.
We're talking with Kent Pavelka, play-by-play voice for Nebraska basketball. Kent, let's go to this weekend on the court. Obviously, Nebraska gets a big win against Northwestern. Kind of walk me through your thought process. Obviously, you had the call on that big Keisei Tominaga shot that kind of put the game away. Walk me through that thought process as Nebraska's battling with Northwestern. Kind of feels like Northwestern might be coming back in that one. And then all of a sudden, Keisei kind of just turns the lights out on the Wildcats.
Yeah, there was a stretch in there where, I think Nebraska got up, had a comfortable lead, kind of similar to the game before that at Rutgers.
Mm-hmm.
They played in spurts on the road, and they kind of allowed Northwestern a spurt there. But I think the thing about that game was that, they'd lost 2 in a row after beating Purdue, and I think it's the Jekyll and Hyde kind of feel about this team that is interesting. The fans were just giddy, and we're never going to lose another game after Purdue, and then some of them after Rutgers are never going to win another game. So I think it was really, really big that they came back and showed the resiliency that they did after Rutgers. And so here we go again, Ohio State tomorrow night, and they just got to wash, rinse, and repeat the way they play when they play well.
Yeah, what is the big, just the big scouting report really for Ohio State tomorrow? What Nebraska has to do, as we mentioned, just it's going to be a lot of high pressure games the rest of the season to get where they want to get.
No kidding. I mean, there's not much to choose from when you want to talk about the difference in talent in the Big Ten this year. Once you get maybe past Purdue and maybe Wisconsin, and Ohio State, I'll guarantee you they're good enough to come in here and win. If the Huskers don't play like they need to play, but they're 13-5. They're 3-4 in the league. They've had trouble winning on the road. As a matter of fact, they've lost 12 straight road games dating back to last year. So Chris Holtman's kind of on the hot seat, but he's got good players, and anybody can beat anybody. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but it's true.
Especially in this year's Big Ten. Kent, we appreciate your time. One of these days I'm going to have you on over the summer, and I'm just going to have you walk me through all my favorite Kent Pavelka calls over the years. And I'm going to see if I can squeeze a touchdown, Tommy Frazier out of you at some point. But not today. We will save that for another day. Kent, we appreciate your time as always.
That'll take about 10 minutes.
Kent,
Thank you.
We appreciate you. That's Kent Pavelka. He is the play-by-play voice for Nebraska basketball. back in another life was also the play-by-play voice for a couple pretty good Nebraska football teams.
Yeah, not bad
as well.
I'd love to pick his brain. Like, can you give me it all? I want to know it all. Give it to me.
Speaking of those Nebraska football teams, we've got Damon Betting coming up next year on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and for this 9 o'clock hour, KFOR in Lincoln. If you've been in a personal injury accident with all this crazy snow and ice and nonsense that we call winter in Nebraska, Dyer Law has you covered. If you've been in a personal injury accident, you can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. Call the Dyer Law team at 402-393-7529 or visit dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's DYER.law. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is our old friend DB, Damon Benning. What's going on, man?
How are you fine people doing today?
Oh, we are doing well. Just covering a lot of ground on a Monday here and imagining what it would have been like if Mike Sauter was the one that accidentally laid out Caitlin Clark after a basketball game.
Now that would have been funny. So,
wait, Ravi, tell him what you think he would have done.
That would be interesting because
he definitely would have stood over
probably
her, right?
Would have challenged.
Yeah,
I was going to say he probably would have challenged.
Ravi,
her to
say it. Ravi, go.
Well, like one-on-one.
What?
He would have stood over and been like, "What?"
Oh, that is his go-to, isn't it? What?
He would have like popped the chest out, you know? What?
Yeah.
I could see it. There were some weird angles, right? Like,
yeah.
One angle I thought, oh man, she got rocked, and then the next I was like, maybe not so bad. But I guess at the end of the day, I don't know. I just want people safe.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's a
however
crazy take, Damon. I don't.
So I don't really care about like whether she did really get hit hard or she didn't or whatever. I just don't want athletes to be in that situation. Is that a hot take?
That's a scalding hot take.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because I won't say anyone. There's very, very few people I dislike enough where it's like, oh, you got hurt, but do that again, right? I'm in the solutions business, right? So you just try to keep that from happening again. That's kind of the gist of it.
The way I saw it was like I don't think she actually got hit that hard. I think it startled her more than anything. And like we've all been there, right? Like something kind of comes out of nowhere and you almost overreact to it because you didn't see it coming. Like that's how I viewed that situation.
Yeah, 100%. And I didn't get into the weeds of like the severity or whether it was media or not media. I'm just like,
was she selling it? Selling the call.
I just don't want her to have to deal with it, you know. And I appreciate her talents. Even though she drills the state schools almost every time she sees her, but that's okay. She's just a good player, and I always want those people playing.
DB, let's start off with So Avarie asked a super interesting question, so I'll let her ask it. But I want to start off with:
Am I as big a fan of the Chiefs as she is? No.
I don't know that anybody is. But no,
we won't go there. Your Steelers didn't help us at all.
Oh, we're trying. I'm just glad my man Mike Tomlin is back. So we'll figure out the offensive side of the ball later.
I want to start with Michigan here, right? Because I think it's more likely than not that Harbaugh ends up moving on to the NFL. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, whatever. But if he does, I'm kind of looking at possibilities for future head coach at Michigan. And it's kind of a weird job, right? Because of how they view themselves, not only in football, but also how they view themselves in the academic world of college athletics. And so I think that really narrows down their search field more than it would most places coming off of a national title. I know a lot of people throw Sharon Moore out there. I know some people throwing Jesse Minter out there. Am I crazy to think maybe David Shaw's like the perfect guy to replace him again?
Well, Shaw's kind of laying in the cut, isn't he? And he has some Michigan man tendencies.
That's what I said,
right?
Even though he's not like technically.
Out in California, they recruited Caleb pretty hard early on, and I think to the good or to the bad, right? Because I'm pitting this against, I should say, like the David Shaw that I would hear on draft day, or the David Shaw that I saw that was having a lot of success at Stanford early on. But the last couple of years hadn't really been like that, right? So, Rizak took Caleb out to their team camp, and it was going well. And I was getting some insight early on because I was coaching, and I said, what do you think? Does it fit? And DJ said, oh, it was well run, it was organized. I'm not, you got kind of this aura that there's things other than football that are really important to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of stuck with me, right? Kind of that academia, that professional, that, hey, we're more than just athletes kind of thing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then, a couple months later, I talked to Harrison Phillips quite a bit, and I was getting some insight because his defensive coordinator was the one that was recruiting Caleb pretty hard. And I got this just like deductive reasoning, right? I just kind of got this sense that it's not that football was secondary, not necessary. It's just that there was this totality of the thing of being at Stanford playing football that was most important, right? And that's kind of how I feel about Michigan. And it's weird how, Shaw went from the darling 6-7 years ago to Cali, man. He got fired, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that line from Batman or whatever. He said, you
live long enough to,
yeah, the hero villain thing, right? Or you
either die a hero or you live long
enough to be yeah, right? So I get those vibes, but that's kind of why I like Moore or Mentor, because there's just something about that job. Brandon Williams is a Michigan guy. He went to Central and had a heck of a career there playing in the defensive backfield. And I talked to him from time to time about Michigan. And there is this totality of image, kind of this aura. And, oh, by the way, we want to be pretty good on the field too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you do have to kind of have somebody if that's what they want to uphold. Right. Because even for a guy like, Brady Hoke, he just didn't seem polished enough. Right. He didn't know how to blend getting a high caliber athlete. And I mean, that was a guy that I think would have enjoyed coaching 2 and 3 stars. Right. Unfortunately, that's just not how Michigan wants to recruit either. So there has to be this balance. But you need the right kind of high caliber guys that it's hard to explain like the physical attributes or the emotional characteristics with it. But there is definitely something to the term Michigan man. Like when you hear it,
mm-hmm.
you kind of get an image of what it is and what it means to be. So I think it's a really, really tricky job.
The image that I get is usually pretentious, but that's okay.
And I don't mean it to the negative.
No, I
right?
know.
I just think there's a way. I think there's a way that you go about doing your business, because for even as much versatility as Charles Woodson has, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's still this aura about him in terms of the essence of who he is. And a lot of it has to do with Michigan, right? He acts like a Michigan man. Jim Harbaugh acts like a Michigan man. There's just something that happens within the walls of that culture that I think isn't for everybody. It's just not. I mean, look how Ward Manuel carries himself. I mean, you don't know if he's the head of the mafia or he's running Apple, right? He's very buttoned up. He has this image and he gets things done. It's just, they leave you kind of wondering what makes him tick. And I think that's a total Michigan thing.
That kind of leads into the question I asked Ravi earlier about Jim Harbaugh taking these interviews with NFL teams, because I said everywhere he goes, he's successful, but never is there like a headline or an article or the media. We never know why he's successful. It just like is it's Jim Harbaugh, so it's like successful. But like when we break down the whole Michigan winning the national championship this year, people talked about just like the team overcoming, you know, all the outside noise. And then people were like, Jim Harbaugh, despite all, but like no one ever tells you like,
how good is a guy that missed 6 games?
Yeah, like when Nick Saban retires, we could tell you 5 different attributes on the spot. Like, you know, he's a great this, he's a great that, he develops coaches, he's a great recruit, all these things. And then you get to Jim Harbaugh and it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess he gets it done, but I couldn't sit here and tell you 5 things that makes him like a wonderful football mind, because maybe he is, but from the outside, we don't ever hear like what he does football wise that like makes him a great coach.
I think it's 3 things. Number one, it's confidence. Like he, you know, I saw this firsthand in Indianapolis when he talked after Coach Rule, and he was kind of waiting in the wings underneath where he walked to get food, and he was getting ready to talk, and he just, at the time, I think I was thinking to myself, gosh, he loves commanding the room. He's the maestro, right? You could just tell he knew he was going to get questions about the NCAA. Like he held court, and I'm like, gosh, he is a supremely confident or secure individual. The other thing is he's highly competitive. Like he has such resolve, because remember they went through some transformations a little bit. He upped the recruiting profile a little bit. They went through COVID. They kind of had the down year. He revamped his staff. Quietly, he kind of pulled like a Kirk Ferentz, right? Where he went and got, Kirk hired some Iowa guys. He went and got Hodge, and he got younger in the recruiting office and brought back some former players. And not that that's always the answer, because Lord knows that's not always the answer. But quietly, he's so he made really good hires because he didn't stand pat. Remember Gaddis? We weren't sure it was going to work. He wanted to go tempo and spread, and then the next year it kind of worked, and then all of a sudden he's gone, and then he lets go of a defensive coordinator, and didn't like the blitz schemes, and so he's constantly he seems very demanding, and so I think, and Coach Rule has some tendencies like that, right? Like he's never satisfied, and I think there's something about people that do that, and it's kind of underappreciated because you don't really see it or hear about it, because nobody wants to complain, oh gosh, like this guy's never satisfied, he's constantly swapping this, people just don't talk about that. And then the other thing is I think quietly he's made some good hires.
He
has got some really good assistants. I think he's got a fantastic staff at Michigan, and I always describe Coach Harbaugh, he's crazy like a fox. We were in Chicago one time, and he pulled up, and he was waiting for a ride, and he's frantically talking on his phone in the lobby. And I'm kind of just waiting, watching, and my radio partner at the time is kind of a social guy, and so he was chomping at the bit to go talk to him, but he's kind of by himself. And I'm standing in the lobby. It's probably 6:00 at night. The session's about over, and Severe and I are going to walk over and we're going to walk to go get some fried chicken. And I know, weird, right?
Just funny detail.
I wasn't going to say anything, DB. I wasn't going to say anything.
Every detail.
So, I just remember, like, I was listening to the conversation. He's walking, he's pacing, he's walking, he's pacing, he's walking, he's pacing. And so I was like, hey, sorry to interrupt. Just want to shake your hand, man. Appreciate kind of what you brought to the conference. And I mean, he just looked dead at me, and he's like, oh, it's like, man, my wife, these kids, like, I need to be home. I need to be home. I got to get home. Like, they're driving her crazy. I need to be home.
Like, okay.
And I'm just like,
sick. Of
all the things I thought you were going to say and who I thought you were talking to, that's not what I thought you were going to say. So I just think he's crazy like a fox.
Yeah.
And he's constantly one step ahead.
Yeah.
He's the only guy that parlays almost being on the outs and living in shrouds of darkness to better opportunities. He's mastered how to fall up, and I think he's always one step ahead. It's an underappreciated skill set, but he's definitely got it down.
Well, I mean, he'll always be second place in following up to Willie Taggart, but
that's not going to forgive him for what he momentarily did to your Florida State Seminoles, are you?
Never.
It's a quick two in the queue or whatever that was. 1.5.
I don't even know if he got a full 2. And it was still too long. Listen, I wanted him to hire Lane. That's all I'm saying. I wanted Lane Kiffin.
Isn't it amazing how he's kind of stood pat? Well, he must really like Oxford because he seems like a guy. I mean, look at him in the portal again this year. Even losing Junkins, it's like, no big deal. Let's get that guy to
No, their roster is going to be nuts next year.
Dude, I know they're going to be top 3 in the conference, and it's like, and he's done it quietly with good defense and being able to run the ball, and it's like, and all I ever can hear him say in my head is "come to the sip," right? I mean, he's just
no big deal.
I don't know, man. Life is good for Lane. I think he's found it.
Speaking of like strange guys to have an interaction with, Lane is on that list.
Yeah, so he's one of the guys that Andrew and I came up with a short list. This was a couple summers ago about. And this is when he was huge on Coach Rule. And I was like, there's no way. And he's like, no, I want Coach Rule. This was before it was really kind of popular.
Yeah.
And I think I had like Lane.
Oh, I'd have taken Lane in a heartbeat.
Like 2 or 3. And at that time, just to show you what a genius I am, like I still had Aranda in my top 5.
I did too. No, I liked Aranda.
So it's like, and I mean, you get new information. It's fluid, but.
Yeah. I'll die on the Matt Campbell hill, and I probably have.
I'm team Campbell, class act.
Yeah.
Really good recruiter, straight shooter. I like he's somebody where, like, if something happened to you and he had to watch somebody you care about, like you feel like, okay, he'll figure out.
You're in good hands there.
You're in good hands. Yeah. I'm team Campbell.
Yeah, Lane is. I ran into him at the College World Series a couple years ago.
Now Lane, I wouldn't say the same thing about.
Not sure.
But I would mind him coaching my team. I don't know where they would end up. Right? I mean, I'd be gone for a couple of months, and I could see Caleb calling me. I'm like, "Where are you?" "Oh, I'm some uncharted island with Coach What?
I'm not sure I'd let him watch my dog, but I would let him coach my football team.
Yeah, he definitely can coach.
No, he's a very strange guy to interact with. I only met him briefly at the College World Series, but it seems like when he's not coaching or talking about football, that there is just nothing going on behind the eyes. It's the most bizarre, and maybe he just was like, hey, just take this picture, get out of here. Maybe that's what it was, but it was like it was almost like talking to like a really realistic
Nick Sirianni.
It was like talking to like a really realistic robot. It was weird.
It's good. Like I said, you listened to Sirianni this last week. Oh my goodness.
Let's speaking of Sirianni, let's switch gears to NFL here. Obviously, you've got your NFC and AFC Championship games set, but I'm curious what you think about Buffalo, because they've obviously been right there with Kansas City for the last few years, but haven't been able to get over that hump. How do you weigh in your mind hey, we're right there, we need to stay the course, versus like, obviously we haven't been able to get over this hump, we need to do something different?
So that's a great question. They have to focus on so the natural tendency, especially in the NFL, is what do we have to do to beat Team X, right? Buffalo has most of that. They just don't have Patrick Mahomes. So Buffalo can't be fooled by the fool's gold. Buffalo needs to stay within what they do. They need to go get another wide receiver. They got to go get another cornerback, and they got to go get a D tackle, right? Mahomes isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And Allen, outside of probably, I'm not going to apologize for being a great talent, because he is. But, I mean, outside of probably 4 plays, he may have been the best player on the field yesterday. He just wasn't – he just didn't make the plays that Mahomes did. And remember, Mahomes got the great catch from Scantling.
Yeah.
And he got the commitment from Pacheco when it mattered, which for the life of me, I can't figure out why Buffalo got away from Cook.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I don't know. I mean, they'll have to revisit that, but Buffalo's just got to keep it in now. So again, you got to go get another wide receiver. I mean, Davis is a free agent. You're getting inconsistency. Maybe you like Shakur. He's still not a number one, you know, and Diggs, for whatever anybody wants to say about Dorsey, Diggs hasn't been the same since Dorsey hadn't been there. So maybe it's age, maybe it's coincidence. I don't know, but they got to figure out how to get Diggs going again. And they've got to get a little more stout up front against the run.
I saw something in the break that said that the Bills had the ball for 37 minutes and they ran 31 more plays than the Chiefs. Like, I don't remember that looking like they had 31 more plays than the Chiefs.
It's the Mahomes factor. You're afraid to give him the ball regardless of how much time is or isn't on the clock.
Yeah.
You just think when it matters, he's going to find a way to make a play, and he doesn't need a lot of cracks at it. You know, there was a stretch where I felt like it got away from Buffalo, where I felt like they should have been up probably 10 or 13, and they were up 3,
mm-hmm.
and I felt like they were gonna be in trouble. You know, Kansas City couldn't convert to touchdowns in the red zone, and they were kicking field goals, and I'm like, God, it feels like Buffalo should be up more at the half.
Yeah.
And they weren't. And you just can't give a winner, a talented winner, that many cracks at it. And he figured out a way. He made some throws, especially on a couple of check downs along the sidelines where he scrambles. Because how cool was it to see that those were the 2 quarterbacks that led the league in terms of avoiding sacks.
Mm-hmm.
So you knew it wasn't going to be about pass rush. It was going to be about who could make the most plays. And you know, Kansas City's defense was probably the best unit on the field yesterday. A little bit better than their offense, a little bit better than Buffalo's offense, and certainly better than Buffalo's defense. But I've liked Kansas City's secondary and that defense for a long time.
DB, about a minute left here. So as I'm sitting here as a 49ers fan, I'm looking across the aisle and I'm going, okay, the Ravens might scare me the most in terms of how that game has gone, but you just went through a very good job of describing why I never want to play Patrick Mahomes. Where is it? Ravens? Like, is that the answer who I want to play? Is that the right answer?
Well, I like Lamar Jackson, but I love Patrick Mahomes. I think Spagnuolo will have something for Lamar Jackson to force him to have to throw the ball. I think Kansas City's got to shore up their linebacking play a little bit, but I think Baltimore's the most complete team, but they don't have Patrick Mahomes, and I know what I'm saying. I know. Lamar Jackson is incredible.
He's not Patrick Mahomes.
He doesn't win when it counts.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I hate to discount the Lions because they're on a heater. But if it's Niners Chiefs or Niners Ravens, I'm not complaining. But it's hard not to cheer for Dan Campbell. No offense, Ravi.
Hey, come on, man. No, DB, how dare you? We appreciate it as always. I'm sure.
Well, the 49ers are my pick to win the Super Bowl, so you're okay.
That's right. Sorry, let just ride with that pick. Don't get crazy on me, DB.
You guys are good.
All right, we'll talk to you again soon, buddy.
Anytime.
Bye, DB.
We will be back. We will be back.
Gilbert, he has 20.
Isaacs off the screen. We will be back.
Iowa State dodges one there. Here's Gilbert with it. 13 to shoot it. 4:29 on the game clock. Cyclones up 10. Gilbert to the left wing with 9 to shoot. Crosses over. Now double clutch. Drives left side. Lays it in. Beautiful play by Keyshawn Gilbert. He has 20.
Isaacs off the screen into the paint. Little baby hook. Good. I mean, it just can't be stopped. It's a career high 30 for Pop Isaacs.
Butter, largest lead at 7.
Iowa State.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. It is time for your Warhorse Sportsbook Sports Cleanup, and that means it's also time for me to tell you about the Warhorse Festival of Games. Between now and February 1st, make sure you get qualified with entries into the Festival of Games. Every $50 sports book ticket gets you an entry into both the $100,000 prop card challenge and the $20,000 grand prize drawing. The prop card challenge is super simple. All you do is fill out your props for the Professional Football Championship on February 11th. And if you go 25 for 25, you will have your shot at that $100,000. But even if you're like me and probably going to go 0 for 25 on the props, you'll still be entered in for the $20,000 cash prize or free slot play drawing.
I'll take it.
make sure you are a Warhorse Rewards member, because that's how you validate those entries. Full details at warhorsecasino.com. And that is just for the casino in Lincoln. You have to go to the casino in Lincoln to get qualified and to validate those entries. That's the Warhorse Festival of Games. So lots of stuff going on this weekend, Avery, that we haven't got to yet.
Yeah.
Because it's been a busy weekend for NFL football, college basketball, lots of things that we care about here. One thing that I did want to bring up that we hadn't got to yet was there was a little bit of a controversy with that Hardman fumble through the end zone, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because in recent years, I mean, this has been the rule forever, right? You fumble through the end zone, it's a touchback, it's the other team's ball. In any other place on the field, you fumble out of bounds, you get the ball where it goes out of bounds.
Yes.
Right? So it seems to be a departure from what the normal ruling would be when you fumble out of bounds. But obviously you're in the end zone, so you can't take the ball inside the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
It's a strange situation. And I don't know, it feels a little weird that you're penalized for them not actually getting the ball.
Yeah.
Right? Like the Bills didn't recover that ball. They didn't actually cause a turnover.
Right. Yeah. It's weird because in that moment, when you watch it back, you're like, just secure the ball. Like, just go down. But in any other situation, how many times does someone, like, if they're going head first, they're going to extend the football?
You reach and,
so, like, it's just like, it was a weird situation. Like you said earlier, he literally hits the ground and it looks like the ball comes out. You just happen to lose possession a little bit before. I will say it did, like, freshen me up a little bit on the rules of the situation, because I instantly was like, oh, okay, well, we'll get the ball, whatever.
Yeah.
But the minute the Bills guys got up and started pointing their direction, I was like, wait, hold on. Did that?
It's a very strange rule.
And it was weird. And I haven't seen it in a while. And it was weird. Obviously that made me pretty nervous. Can't change the pace there. But yeah, it was a weird situation. I don't know.
I don't know what the right answer is though, right? Because I mean, what, do you get it at the 1 yard line? Like, do you get it where you fumbled it? Like, I don't know what the right answer is.
I know.
It doesn't necessarily feel like the right answer is the other team gets the ball at the 20
It's
yard
like
line.
if we overthrew a touchdown pass and it went out of the end of the end zone,
right?
You're about, like, obviously that's dramatic, but I'm just saying in general, when the rules became a thing, it was just like, hey, if you throw it out of the end zone, no biggie. However, if it rolls out of the end zone, issue.
I have these like inner monologues with myself sometimes about like trying to figure out, how did people come up with the rules to these games?
Yes. I have a book, actually.
Do you?
I have a book and it has all the sports and it's like the original rules, original whatever. And I have it in my room and I need to bring it out more often.
Yeah.
Because I want to know where that came from as well.
It's because some of them you're just like, who decided that?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think about, people talk about how funny kickers are sometimes, right? Like your entire game is often decided, like it was for the Bills last night with Tyler Bass, by a guy that does none of the other things that the football players do, right? He just runs on the field, kicks the ball, runs off the field. And multiple games every week are decided by that person who really does not play football. They just kick the ball. Yeah. They play modified rugby-ish kind of.
Huge role.
Enormous role, right? Like incredibly important. You can't win without them.
Nope.
But it is such a departure from everything else that happens on a football field.
Yeah.
And same thing with soccer, right? With shootouts. Like a shootout is so much different than 98% of what happens on a pitch, right?
Yeah.
And I get you have penalties and whatever. So sometimes you have that same situation. But everything else on a soccer field is so, it's so like fluid and movement and going back and forth and there's no stoppages. And then, the game's tied when the thing ends here, when the clock runs out here. So everybody just line up. We're going to take all the time in the world. There is no running. There is no movement. It's just kick the ball into the net.
Yeah.
It'd be like deciding a basketball game with a free throw shooting contest. It's a very weird departure. And so I sometimes I sit here and wonder, like, how did we decide that?
Yeah.
Like,
while we're at it, there's a lot more that goes into a penalty kick, and we'll just leave it at that. Because I get all the time. Don't you just kick it? No, you do not.
No, I don't underestimate the difficulty.
That wasn't towards you. It just was like, now we're here.
Like
I'm gonna let
peeve.
anyone that's out. Why don't you just kick it as hard as you get? No.
It's
there's a science. You work on it.
I will say I think the goalie's job in that situation is maybe the most difficult place in sports to be put into.
Yep.
Because your failure rate's enormously high, but the pressure to still make a save is ridiculous.
Yeah, you're supposed to make an educated guess, but your educated guess comes from your training and your scouting. But yet, you're
just guessing, right? I mean, that's because you cannot react in time.
Nope, you're not allowed to move. You're supposed to read hips, but people are good at that. Like, there's a lot more that goes into it. I didn't mean to get into that, but also, there we are. Also, we didn't get to this either, but the Rodney Terry horns down conversation.
Shane, I think we're a little early there on that, Shane.
So, my bad. Sorry.
No, you're okay. I just
right? We got 4 more minutes.
I was just gonna basically cue that conversation up for hopefully in a further day. But
let's get into it now. I think we got a few minutes.
Okay, great. That conversation cracks me up because
the horns down thing.
It cracks me up because they won this past weekend and he was jumping up and down, happy. And he came into that last game after they got beat by UCF and was like, we're going to expect to win every game. We're not going to act like we just won the national title. Yet he did all that. But I'm cracking up because I feel like I understand, like, it's disrespectful to Texas, but like every single person does it.
Yeah.
UCF is brand new to this conference. Do you know how long they've probably been waiting to like throw a horns down? Second of all, you're about to leave to go to the SEC. It's like a bully. Like, as a parent, you tell them, hey, like, stand up for yourself, obviously, but like, don't let them bother you. Like, once they know they bothered you, they're going to keep doing it. They just went into the SEC showing every bully that like they're so bothered by it.
They're so sensitive about the horns down
thing. SEC is just going to absolutely hang it everywhere. I don't know. I kind of was over it. I was like kind of laughing about it, like casually saw it on Twitter. And then they talked about it for a good like 30 minutes on College Game Day on Saturday morning. And I was just cracking up because even Reese Davis was like, LSU eats an alligator when they play Florida. Like Auburn and whatever, they throw things on the field. Like literally, he's like, if a hand gesture, he's like, people throw the L's down for Louisville. Like, it's just going to happen. And the fact that they threw such a big fit, maybe because it's Texas, I don't know. But going into the SEC, like, actually cracks me up. I'm like, oh, you just lit the fire. Like, you poured gasoline on your own fire.
Every single fan in the SEC will be giving them horns down constantly.
I don't know why it cracked me up, but I just was like, but my question is, clearly I haven't thought about this after the game day thing. But like, do you think Rodney Terry would be saying that to like KU players or Bill Self? I feel like no, but like, because it's a brand new team and it's UCF and like they're new, whatever. Like, I don't know, just maybe a hot take there, but like, are you going to go tell Bill Self like, hey, don't tell your players that was really classless?
I bet he would want to. I just don't think he
would. That's what I'm saying.
Like he would want to tell Bill Self that. I just don't think he would because he's not in the same league as Bill Self. But they do get so sensitive about the horns down thing. And it's like, you realize it doesn't actually do anything, right?
Yeah.
They're not flipping you off.
No.
They're not like calling your mother names. They're literally just doing your signal upside down.
Yeah.
It is not a big deal.
Like people do the gator chomp like in a like they
sarcastically. Yeah.
And like
all the time.
LSU chants like profanity chants about the gator thing. Like it has terrible words in it. Like it's just gonna happen. Like I don't know. It really cracked me up. The more like game day talked about it, like got my juices going. And I was like, they just lit the fire.
One of the most harmless things that fans do.
Like if every school had a hand gesture, like the other school would mock it.
Always mock the
100%. I don't really know what Nebraska would do. Like, how do you replicate? I don't really think.
Yeah, I don't know what you do with like a corn. I don't know.
I don't know either. Like, how do you make an N? I don't know. But like, no matter what, like someone's gonna,
Is that
and they're
backwards?
gonna flip it or something. You know,
right?
Exactly.
And,
like
end down.
Like,
like I don't know.
Seriously, that's what I'm saying.
Here, right.
But like everyone that has one is just anyway. I thought that was a funny conversation, and
it's a super weird. Like it feels like they're just that like whiny, complaining kid in class. It's like, oh, they were mean to. They looked at me funny. It's like, so this is
look this way.
Yeah, like just don't look at them. Like this is not. It's like the. I was the youngest sibling, so I can say this.
Yeah.
It's like the youngest sibling who just complains about their brother or sister looked at them funny or bumped them. Just don't. It didn't affect you at all. You don't have to do anything.
Don't do that. Don't do that. That's classist. Don't do that.
That is the Warhorse Sportsbook Sports Cleanup. Coming up next, CJ Moore from The Athletic.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Iowa State dodges one there. Here's Gilbert with it. 13 to shoot it. 4:29 on the game clock. Cyclones up 10. Gilbert to the left wing with 9 to shoot. Crosses over. Now double clutch. Drives left side. Lays it in. Beautiful play by Keyshawn Gilbert. He has 20.
Isaacs off a screen into the paint. Little baby hook. Good. I mean, it just can't be stopped. It's a career high 30 for Pop Isaacs.
Butter, largest lead at 7.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. As we wrap up the show, I want to tell you about our friends at Team Jack, the Team Jack Foundation, currently funding 13 projects and collaborations with national institutes such as Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, Memorial Sloan Kettering and Cancer Center, and Columbia University. To date, they've raised over $12 million for cancer research. Their focus is on finding better treatments for kids fighting brain cancer and one day a cure. That is the Team Jack Foundation. Make sure you check out everything they are involved with Team Jack. Joining us now on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline is CJ Moore of The Athletic, covering college basketball. CJ, how are you this morning?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
We are doing well. So I got to ask you, I don't think you and I have spoke before, and I do see you've got point guard in your bio. I need you to give me a player comp for your game.
In college basketball right now, probably Tyler Kolek.
Okay. All right. That's a good, I like it. All right. Facilitator, can score when you need to. CJ, speaking of the Big East, let's start there. Obviously, UConn #1 in the country. Marquette and Creighton started much higher, have fallen out a little bit over the course of the season. As you kind of look at this league about 2/3 of the way through the regular season, is there anyone besides UConn in the conference that you look at currently and you say, hey, they've got a good chance or an opportunity to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament?
I think I would still say that Marquette would have a good chance. I think that playing in the Big East and basically running it back from a year ago, I think some teams have kind of figured out ways to guard them better. And I also think the expectations of, returning 4 guys and being Big East champs and expecting to do really well again this year, I think that's kind of when things have gone bad for Marquette. Shaka Smart's kind of talked about this, how like those expectations maybe weighed them down a little bit. But I think once they get outside of the Big East and can play other teams in the NCAA tournament, much like it happened for UConn a year ago, that was beneficial. So I had Marquette preseason number 2. I was pretty high on them then, and I maybe lost a little bit of faith, but I still think this team has a chance to go pretty deep.
We were talking to a basketball guy last week, and he just kind of said, the field is pretty wide open right now. It doesn't feel like there's anyone that's really at that number 1 spot that feels like, okay, yeah, that might be a for sure 100% national championship contender. Has there been any sleeper teams or teams that have kind of flown under the radar, but have also kind of like made a jump so far in the first half-ish of the season that would maybe surprise some people down the stretch?
Yeah, I'm actually working on like my mid-season column right now, and I have, the 6 teams I think that have a chance to win the national title. I think 2, at least one team that I'm not sure was in many people's preseason top 25. I think we had them in there, but is pretty high right now is Auburn. And I still am a little hesitant with Auburn because they haven't really beat anybody that's been that, that's that good. Like they haven't beat anybody that I think will make the second week in the NCAA tournament, but all 16 of their wins are by double digits. They're just crushing people.
Yep.
They're really, really good on the offensive end. Pretty dang good on the offensive end. They're super deep, and they just kind of, wear you out. So I think that's one team. Tennessee, we had pretty high. I think we had pretty high, but some people, I think they were like maybe just barely top 10, I think, in the AP poll in the preseason. Dalton Connect, I had a story on him last week, has been one of the All-Americans nobody saw coming. He was at Northern Colorado last season, the second team All Big Sky guy, second team. He might be a first team All-American. So that's a jump we don't usually see, like those up transfers. Usually their numbers aren't nearly close to what they were at the lower levels, and he's been even better. So those are 2 teams I think, they're championship contenders that maybe we didn't see coming into the year. 2
of those teams that are in the top 5 over and over are, Kansas and North Carolina, who both play this evening. Cincinnati, Kansas, and then Wake Forest, North Carolina, 2 pretty big Monday night games. How do you kind of see those 2 maybe playing out this evening?
Where I don't even know. Where's the North Carolina one? Is it at Wake Forest or at North Carolina?
It is at North Carolina.
Okay, well, I think the Heels will win that one.
Yeah.
If you've been paying attention to the first few weeks of conference play, home road matters a lot. It always does, but it feels like it matters even more this year. But Steve Forbes has a pretty good team this year. He is kind of the transfer whisperer. He's what Fred Hoiberg was back in the day. It seems like whoever Steve gets, basically you don't pay attention to what they did at the previous school. Guys like Hunter Salas this year and Efton Reed, who were just okay guys not even that good guys off the bench at Gonzaga last year. Now putting up huge numbers for him, and that's a pretty good team. So I don't think that's a gimme for North Carolina, but I think they win. And then you never bet against Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse,
right?
But Cincinnati is a team that's play. While their record in the Big 12, I think they're 2-3. They've played everybody pretty close, and their 3 losses are by, I'm looking at now, 8 points. 3 losses by 8 points.
Yeah.
So they played everybody close. They've got a center, and Aziz Bandego is just got eligible a few weeks ago. He was at Utah Valley last year, and he could create some problems for Hunter Dickinson with his length and his shot blocking ability. And then Jizzle James is a guy that's a freshman, and when he's playing really well as he was, they beat BYU a couple weeks ago. He was a big key to that one. So I think that could be a relatively close game, but I'm always betting Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse, especially after a loss.
For sure.
We're talking with CJ Moore of The Athletic. CJ, you mentioned your story on Dalton Connect from Tennessee, and I don't know if people are necessarily aware, at least in this part of the country where we focus on a lot of Big Ten and Big East basketball. I'm not sure if they're totally aware of this story, but as you were writing that piece, were you able to figure out how this has happened? Because this is a guy that as recently as 21, 22 had zero interest from anyone outside of Northern Colorado. How did this happen?
Well, he was a JUCO kid, and usually JUCO basketball isn't what it used to be. Back in the Larry Johnson days, we'd see some guys come from the JUCO level and end up All-Americans. But I think one thing he was a non-qualifier coming out of high school, so that kind of hurt his college interest then. And then the other thing was when he was at at his JUCO, it was when COVID happened, and I think some guys slipped under the radar then. And there were a couple high majors that were interested in him when he went to Northern Colorado, but I just don't think anybody was willing to pull the trigger. And he was a little, Northern Colorado was really interested, so he just decided to go there. But this is a guy that nobody would know about if it weren't for that extra COVID year, because he's in his 5th year of college basketball. Usually he'd be eligible by now, and I just think he's a guy that has NBA type skill with the size. He's a late bloomer. He's 6'6". I have a story. He was 5'4" as a freshman in high school. He's super bouncy, really athletic, can score at 3 levels. And I just think he was on one of those teams that, North Colorado didn't even have a winning record last year. And so nobody really knew about him, but he is a very, very talented player. And then you put him around other really good players and put him with a really good coach. And it's just kind of been the perfect storm for him. But it's a cool story to see because, like I said, nobody knew who he was a year ago. And now we just did our mid-season All-American teams, and I had him as the first teamer.
CJ, we started this interview with a player comp. I want to end it with a player comp as well. Who does Dalton Connect remind you of in terms of, you talked about his NBA profile. Is there a guy who he kind of fits the mold of in terms of NBA players?
That's tough. This one might be kind of extreme.
Okay.
I'm not saying he will become this type of guy in the NBA, but there's some like Paul George.
Oh, okay.
And what he does with his size and the ability to shoot it and kind of score from all 3 levels. He idolizes Kevin Durant, and he's even got he's like what he's doing at Tennessee right now is the numbers he's put up recently in like the last 4 games. He's averaging 32 a game. It's kind of reminiscent of what Rick Barnes had in KD his 1 year at Texas. So I don't think he's in those guys' league as far as a pro, but I think he's going to be, I think he's going to be a solid pro, and it's just amazing that he'll play in the NBA based off where he was, a year or 2 ago.
That's CJ Moore of The Athletic. CJ, we appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
That's CJ Moore of The Athletic. We appreciate him joining us on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. We appreciate Avarie filling in the last couple of days as Andrew was at his bachelor party, and we'll find out if he's back tomorrow. I think so. I hope so. But Avarie, thank you.
Of course.
It's been
Thanks for having me.
It's been a fun couple days. Also, thank you to all our listeners. We appreciate you joining us on a Monday. We will be back tomorrow. I believe it'll be me and Andrew Rogers. We'll see if he survived his Vegas weekend tomorrow on Hurrdat Sports Radio.